Let's start today's lecture. So, first of all, before starting the join related task or join concept, so we will solve the yesterday's task. So, only few of the students solve this question. So, for that, first of all, we'll resolve this issue, questions, our home assignment, and after that, we're trying to implement the join operation. So the first question is return the customer ID by using group by. Okay, so this is the task of group by and having. So return the customer ID of customer who have spent at least $110. That means here we get the condition at least 110. Okay, and here for that we need to use the group by also. Also we need to use the aggregate function with the staff member. That means here we also use the where clause. Okay, and this one is an expected answer, so we need to perform it. So today I have some electrical issue. Okay, so अगर left भी हो गया तो don't worry about that, I will rejoin. So let's start with this task. So what will be the hint of that task? Expected answer. So this one will be the expected answer. 187 and 148, and this one is a sum. Okay, 110.81 and 110.72. Okay, this one is a sum. So now the hint related tasks, use payment table, use concept of the where, group by, and having. So let's do the task and trying to implement the task. I will connect it with my server. Now trying to open the query table on that database PSUE college. Click on that and click on the query tool. Okay, so carefully you need to read the query. So first of all, what will be the task according to this business question? And this one is a question. So return the customer ID. We need to return what? Customer ID of customer who have spent at least $1. That means we need to return customer ID as well as the amount. Okay, who created this? Okay, so for that we required a staff member whose ID is 2. So for that we required a payment table. So first of all, what should we do? So we'll go step by step. So get the result. We cannot able to perform full query at a single time. Okay, for that you require a 4 to 5 years of experience. Okay, so for that first of all we'll retrieve the table. So here I'm trying to open the table. Select all from the name of table is payment, and I will restrict that payment with output as one only, because just we need to analyze the table. Okay, so for that I restrict the table. So here we get the details about payment table. Payment ID is there, customer ID is there, staff ID is there, rental ID is there, amount is there, and payment is there. Now we need to apply the logic on that. Okay, so what they said that they need to retrieve the customer ID whose staff ID is 2 and the value is at least dollar of 110. That means here we need to use aggregate function. So first of all, what should we do? We'll use aggregate function over here. So for that reason, we get the information. So for that, first of all, we retrieve the customer underscore id only, and comma will use aggregate function as a sum of amount. Okay, so that means we get all the customer id and we get the actual summation of that customer id. Okay, so here we give sum of amount. Okay, so trying to hit the output here, get the error. Okay, so we need to perform the group by, so that's why here aggregate function is not working properly. So I will restrict the result, and here we do what? Here we use just group by. So we get the, because aggregate function is working on that. So here I'm using group by. Group by with what? Only customer ID. We get the group by customer ID, and just use that. Here we do from what? From payment. We're trying to execute. So actually right now we get all the customer ID who did the transaction. We get the all customer ID who did the transaction. Now another query is that we require only We required only the output. Okay, so for that only student staff ID is also required. So for that, just what should I do? We required a staff ID also. Okay, we don't want to require, but we required the result of staff ID. So for that, here we need to use a where clause. Okay, so select customer ID sum from payment. Okay, where we need to use ORIA. So here we where the staff score ID is equal to 2. Okay. Get that we get only staff 2 information related task. So like that I can perform such a type of operation. So we can easily read that data. So now we get all the record of customer ID who deal with staff ID too. Now we need to use the condition, last condition. We require only the purchase of greater than 110. Okay, so for that reason, we can use max also, or we can also use a having clause. Okay, so when I trying to use the sum operation, because sum is an aggregate function, we cannot able to use the relational operator directly over here, and we cannot use directly where option. Okay, so for that, this the aggregate function. We already know that the aggregate function, if we have an aggregate function, if trying to use that, then we need to use the having clause. Okay, so here just what should I do? I will use having. Okay, so we use the having. Okay, a name of attribute is, so here I'm trying to use sum of, in round bracket I will use amount as a attribute, and greater than equals to. Why we use equals to? They said the transaction must be 110 at least and up to greater. Okay, so here if you want to use a greater only, then we need to use 109 if you want to use greater, and if you want to use a greater than equals to, then we use $110. Okay, so this is our result. So we get the expected result as. So don't worry, just make a note of that while trying to resolve the queries. Okay, just break that part. Okay, certain query will be divided into certain the query will be divided into certain modules or parts, and after that we are trying to execute. See, we get the output 187 and 148, 110.81, 110.72. So just check the output, expected answer 187 and 148. Okay, so like that you need to resolve the query, and these tasks are most important. Okay, so just I thought that I didn't want to perform this operation, but in last section just only 4 to 5 students. Okay, among that Bankar is there, Ankita is there, Swapnil is there, uh, Swapnil Gadekar is there, and Rathod Pratik is there. So Rathod Shruti is there, and Sherike is there. So only 4 to 5 peoples or students perform the task. So for that reason, just I thought we need to resolve this query because this task is most important. Now another question, how many fields begins with a letter J? What do you think that? Here we need to use a wildcard. We already discussed about that. What is a wildcard? We need to use a percentage symbol over here. Okay, so the expected answer is 20. Just how many? That means we require a count of table films. So just retrieve the table and you get the basic idea. Here I am trying to retrieve the table. Everything. Select everything from table called as field. Just break down the query. First of all, we'll retrieve the data. Okay, just wait few seconds. We'll able to, yeah, now film ID is there, title is there, description is there. Okay, so afterward, release year is there, language ID, rental duration, rental rate, length, everything will be there in the film chapter. Okay, so now what said what how many films begin with the letter J? So we require to use title also. So here is a title. Okay, so we need to retrieve the films that will be started from the J. Okay, so for that we need to use a like operator. Have you heard about that like operator? Okay, so just we need to retrieve that. So for that, here what should I do? I will use a count of all. Just we require a count, select count of all, and from film, here we need to use a group by of what should we need to use? Post. Just before that, we'll retrieve the film names, and after that, we'll use count. Instead of that count, I will use just title from the film group by. Here also, I will use the group by with title. Okay. Group by with title. So after that, select title from film group by with title. Just hit that. Just try to check. We get all the unique data. Okay, when we perform the group by, we get the distinct data. We did not get any duplicate data. Okay, so now we need to use what like operator here. So here we need to use like operator. So we get the details regarding that. So here, first of all, just 1 minute. So we need to use expected data. What will be the help? Here we need to use the like function. We already done, and in that section we need to use like of what? Why we use the like in that section? Like is used for the capital case. I like is used for the case sensitive. In case sensitive, like is used for the case sensitive, and just we need to use the like clause. So see, from film where just we need to add where where like where like, and here we use the single quote for that percentage symbol. And what is the query regarding that? Just we need to use a title start with J. J. Okay. So if you want to use a smaller case, then you can use. So see, yes, we get like does not exist. Select the title from film where like J. Just 1 minute. Film where title like J. They didn't want to use a group by. Okay, so they didn't want to use a group by. So select title from film. Yeah, right. YouTube percentage after that. And J. So we get the J. Okay, so these are the films were started from the J. Okay, so note that assume that these all datas are what we say, the all datas are in the proper format and they don't have any duplicate values. And if you want to, if you think that they if you have a duplicate data, then just use a group by command. Okay. After that, just we need to use count function over here. Here I will use a count function, and in round bracket I will use a title. Okay. So instead of the title, if you want to use a group by thing, if we have assume that if we have duplicate data, okay, I get the same data. Don't worry about that. This thing is also valid. Why? Because whenever we use a group by, then at that time we get the distinct data. Okay, we did not get any duplicate data, and assume that in that section we don't have any duplicate data. That's why I will return same value. Okay, so just we can use same query. We can use a group by, and we if you don't want to use, then we cannot able to use group by also. We get the distinct data. See, we get the distinct data for group by things. Why we use distinct data? Because this title is associated for the single line. So for checking the distinct data, just here I use the title. And if you don't want to use, just remove it. We get the summation of that. Okay, so we get the summation of. Also, we can use some over here aggregate function. So this is the solution of the query. Let's check the expected result. We get the 20. Okay, just assume that this is a valid answer. So just assume that in that section we need to use the things, okay, so which already known that, and after that we need to break the query. Okay, so the last one is what is the customer has highest customer ID. When we use a highest customer ID over here, so we are talking about the order. Okay, highest customer ID, so we are talking about the order. So order means what? Order by ascending descending. Here we need to use whose name start with E. That means here we also use the wildcard, and address ID as a lower than 500. That means here we need to use the relational operator also. Okay, so let's check that. Here is the output. The customer ID 434, and the first name is Eddie and the last name is Tomlin. Okay, so here is the highest customer ID whose name start with E, and uh, address ID is 500. So just how will divide that? First of all, we need to check the table. Okay, so what will be the hint? Use customer table, use where, like, and clause, use descending order by and limit. Okay, why we use limit? Because just we require to use highest number ID. Okay, so for that we get all the data. Okay, and for that we need to use only single data. Highest एक ही हो सकता है, we can say that दो भी हो सकते हैं. So just we need to analyze them. Okay, so what should we do? How will write that query? See, select customer ID, select first name. Here last name is not mandatory, but I have given that last name because first name and last name is now we can easily identify. From what? From customer. From customer. Where first name like, because we given a condition. What is the first name? First name like E, and after that percentage, and address ID is less than 500, order by customer ID, and descending limit. Okay, so limit will specify the one. So this is the command, this is the query of solution. By that we can easily find out. Okay, so let's do one more thing. Select it here, select all customer, analyze it, what are the attributes are there. So we required a customer ID, we required a first name, and we required a address ID. Okay, so select, instead of that all, here I will use what? Customer ID, first name, last name from customer. So just we get only three records over here. Now we need to find what? Condition. Okay, so here for that, just we got the customer ID, first name and last name from the customer. Now we need to provide a condition. Okay, so which condition? Because the first name was E, started with E, and the address ID is less than 500. So just what should I do from customer? Here I will write where clause, where what, where need to specify the condition. uh, First underscore name, like, here we need to specify single quote, and there percentage symbol. Okay. And after that we use the and operator, and the address ID we also require. Okay. So if we don't want to retrieve, then we didn't want to. If we required, then we can pass over. So here this spell we need to specify a double d r a double s, a double d r e double s, address id is less than 100. You just hit it, we get the data. Okay, so but data is we get in the ascending order. We require the highest id. Okay, so whose transaction entered that. Okay, so customer id, last name. So for that, just we need to order by thing. Here we use the order and by attribute name we required. So here we require customer id. Hit it, then we get the same data. Why we get the same data? Because by default it will be treated as a ascending order. So here we use the descending order. Just now we get the descending order data. Okay, but we get the huge amount of data, and we required only highest bit. Okay, So for that, just I will use limit to 1. We get the single. This is the output. By using that we can able to perform. So this is the home assignment. So you will get the description about that assignment. Okay, so now we'll start the next concept, overview of join. See, just make a note of that while learning the join. It's quite harder concept, so carefully read the all the concepts and clear the doubts. Okay, so first of all, that we need to understand what is the join and why we use that. When you use the word join, okay, so we all know that why we use join. We need to use join to combine the tables. So it's a basic thing. Okay, so for example, I want to join part one with part two. We get the final output of part 1 and part 2 when we use the join, but there are different kinds of joins are available. Let's say, so we'll discuss how to combine tables in our database with the use of joins table. That means we need to use two or more table over here. Okay, so for example, if you want to use two or more table, then we you need to use a join. Okay, so like we all know about that Venn diagrams. In that we get the union data. Okay, like that stuff. That means we need to use a combined data. That's why we use the join things. Now what is join? Join will allows us to combine information from multiple tables. Multiple means was two or more. If you want to perform that operation of join, then we need to combine two or more tables at a time. Okay, so we get the same result. So select section video, what kind of things we need to cover. So first of all, we need to learn about the as. Okay, so creating allies with the as clause. Allies is nothing but alternative name. Huh? Okay, we can able to we can discuss about that. So after that, different types of joins. What are the different types of joins? After that, we'll learn about the inner join, outer join, full join, left join, right join, unions, and challenge tasks. Okay, so we'll cover these all points. So first of all, we'll discuss about the as clause. That means allies clause. So here is as clause. So as clause allows us to create allies for column or result. What does it mean? Suppose suppose in that section, just I want to retrieve the whole thing of payment table. Payment table. See, we get the attribute payment ID is there, customer ID is there, staff ID is there, rental. So these are the column name. Okay, these are the columns name. Payment ID is there, customer ID is there, staff ID, rental ID, amount, and payment address. These are what? These are the what? These are the column names. Now when I trying to use the allies, that means when I trying to use this payment ID name with different kind of name. Okay, for example, I don't want to use a payment ID, or it's just I will retrieve the payment ID. So what should I do? Here I will use payment ID, and when I trying to use, and I will hit the record, restrict with two records only, so we get only two records. See, we get the details about that. So we get the payment ID, the payment ID from the payment limit up to 2. Okay, so in that section, see, this attribute or this column name is a payment ID, and by using alias operator, we can change its name. We can change its name. Okay, for example, just I want to use select payment ID. Here I will use as, and here we'll provide a new name. Okay, so assume that here I will provide the new name. That means this payment ID column name is replaced by with new name. Okay, so just trying to hit that, we get the new name. Syntax error of near new name, line number 1. Just 1 minute. Select payment ID. The name is 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Yeah, see, we remove the restriction, select payment ID as a new name from payment table. Earlier, see, we get the information regarding the payment ID. Now we get the information by using new name. Okay, or instead of new name, just I want to say it's PESCOE ID. We can say that when I trying to execute that, just we get the alternate name PESCOE. What does it mean? Just we are trying to change the column names. Okay, why we required? Because we need to combine a lots of things. We need to combine a lots of things. So for that we need to use the alias operator. Okay, so where if you want to combine two, right now I'm doing a operation on single table, so that's why it's not a problem, it's not problematic. But when I performed when I trying to perform a join operation, in that gets in that table we get a number of tables. So for that we require a as, okay, as alias name. So what will be the syntax? As clause which allows to create an alias for column result. Okay, so what will be the syntax? For example, select, after that the column name as new name. Here I'm trying to change the column name as new name. So that's why alias will be used. Okay. So alias will also use for the aggregate function. For example, if you want to calculate the sum, and then we need to display that result. Okay. So for example, just I want to use select sum and the column name. Okay. So here I'm using aggregate function as a sum, and here I'm trying to use the amount. Also, I want to retrieve the customer ID also, so we get the detailed information with customer ID separation. Okay. And just I will use net underscore revenue. That just we get that result. That some amount payment ID appears group by. Okay, so aggregate function. So that's why they said the here we need to use the aggregate function. For example, order by customer underscore. Trying to use that. Just 1 minute. Okay, so that said that select customer underscore ID summer as a net revenue from the payment zero. Okay, so that is here we cannot use that. Just I don't want to use so I want to use the aggregate function over you. I will use amount as revenue from the table called as a payment. This I want to use. I don't want to use a group by over here because it will get some different output. Okay, so we'll discuss about that, the problem of as also. So see, we get the output as, and we get the output of column name having a different name. Okay, we get the output as, so for example, revenue. Okay, when I trying to execute that, so we get the net revenue. Okay, so here I got the aggregate function and we get the result. Okay, so make a note of that. Just as clause is used to rename the given clause. See, when I didn't want to use the revenue option, or sorry, as over here, so we get the such a type of output. Output we get the same, but we get the column name as a sum. Okay, we get the column name as a sum. So at that case, the end user will not understand what is the sum. So for that, just I use just over here we use the additional alias name. Okay, so the sum will replace by we didn't want to change the output, just we need to change the column name. Okay, so when I click on that, there's a certain problem with that. See, when I click on this, we get the output. आउटपुट चेंज नहीं हो रहा है, जस्ट वी चेंज दिस aggregate function name with option rename with a new name called as a net revenue. That means just if you're trying to change the column name, then we need to use the as. Make a note of that. Okay. So why we use, we'll cover in the next few slides. So why we use the as clause, what is the purpose of that? Just make a note of that. Alias name is used for the renaming given column name, and this one the syntax here capital as is used to use alias. Okay, so this one is an example. Here I took the select customer ID from the payment, so we get the result customer ID. See, we get all the result of customer ID. And when I trying to use as clause, see, select customer ID as my data from payment, we rename the given attribute, and this is for the temporary purpose only. Okay, we cannot able to rename the data completely. Just this is the view only options. Okay, read only options. That means we get the data in the format of alias name. Okay, so just the customer name is replaced with my data, and we get the data as my data. Okay. So think about that. Alias as is used to rename the rename the column name, and in round bracket we can say that rename the column name for temporary purpose. Okay, it's not permanent. That means when I trying to perform another operation in that section, I'm using a my data. In that case, we cannot able to perform that. Okay, so see example 2 here. Select amount as a rental price, and from payment we all know that there are different kinds of attributes are available in payment. So select all from payment. Click on that, we get the attributes, we get the different kinds of attributes. I think the payment table was not there, film table is there. That, so we get the film table in that section. See, uh, rental rate is there, replacement cost is there, and what will be the query. So example to select amount as a rental price from the payment. Okay, so payment table is there. So just we need to replace that amount as what and as a rental price or rental rate. Okay, so rental price will be there. So just we need to use what this attribute as a rental price. So what should we do? Select amount as rental underscore. So in that case, we have an attribute of amount. Okay, so that will be not replaced. Just we are trying to change this attribute name, amount name. Okay, we cannot able to change the data. We cannot able to change it. If we don't want to change the data, we need to change just rename the column name. So click on that. So we get the data as a C rental price. We're trying to check that. Earlier it was showing the price and now it is showing the rental price. So this is about the as clause. So as clause will be useful to rename the column name, and it can be used after the attribute. Okay, so just here I'm using the, I think customer ID is there. So customer underscore ID. So we required two columns. We required two columns. Customer ID we required, and we required a alias name as a amount as a rental price. So everything is okay. So we get that customer ID and rental price. See, we get the all data. So here I'm trying to change just amount and name, amount as a rental price. I don't want to change for the customer ID. So we get the customer ID as it is name. And just 1 minute. So like that as operator will work. So when we use aggregate function with sum, we already did that, we get the net revenue. So like that. So now the important question for the as clause, where we can use, where we cannot able to use, and we'll discuss about these points also. Okay, the as operator get execute at the end of query, like a limit function. Limit attribute is there. Limit is also executed at the end of query. Similarly, as operator get executed at the very end. Okay, for example, so this is the example. Select customer ID amount as rental price from table. So this section will be executed at the end of query. Okay, that means first of all it will collect the customer ID, later on it will collect the amount from the payment table, and later on this column name, amount name will be replaced by a rental price. That means it will be executed at the end of query. Okay, and that was a problem. That was a problem. What? Why? So because meanwhile, or meaning that we cannot use allies inside a where operator or group by operator. We cannot able to use allies name inside where operator and group operator. Okay, technically we can say that yes we can use, but it won't be useful for us. Okay, so that's why here I use a word. We cannot use allies inside a where and group by operator. Let's take one example so you will get the idea regarding that. Okay, so just I want to replace this allies name, I don't want to use over here, and just amount, select customer ID amount from the payment table and hit that, we get the certain amount of data. Okay, now I'm trying to use the where. Okay, so here I'm trying to use a from, sorry, from table. It will provide the condition where, next line, where amount, say that amount is greater than 2. Here I provide a certain condition. We all know about the where clause, and here I'm provide a certain condition. So when I click that, it will be executed and we get the output. Okay, when I trying to say that where amount, see, it is executed, we get the amount, and we get the value amount that must be greater than 2. Okay, so when I trying to check that output, we get the output of 2.99, that means greater than 2. Okay, when I trying to use a 5, we get the same output. Okay, different. So in that section we get the output of greater than 5. So in that section, I already told that we cannot able to use, okay, alias inside where and operator, but it's still working. Okay, we don't have any problem. It's working, but problem is that when I trying to use alias inside that, we get the different kinds of problem. Okay, so for example, here I will use alias amount as new name. So in that section, when I trying to execute that, we again did not get any error. Okay, so let's check about that. We did not get any name error. Okay, so just check out the column name was change, new name. Okay, so column name was change, and we successfully created that query. We executed that query, but problem is that we changed the name of column as a new name, and when I trying to use in a where clause by using a new underscore name, then we get the error. Okay, that's why we cannot able to use alias inside a where clause. Okay, so for the beginner, they think that the amount table, the beginner student, or we can say that the student or the uh, employee who started his new job, having experience of 1 year 2 year, they get the same problem on that. Okay, if you have any experience, so you will get the idea regarding that. Okay, so but make a note of that. Here what should I do? What I did, just I retrieving the customer ID and amount, and I change the amount name as a new name, and I'm providing a condition with a new name, and when I trying to hit that, we get the error. See, column new name does not exist. So that's why I said that we cannot able to use alias operator inside the what, inside the where clause. Okay, alias हम where में use नहीं कर सकते. But if you know that here instead of that new name, I am trying to use amount, then we get the output. When then we get the output, and here we change the column name also. Okay, so that's why here I said that, meaning we cannot use the alias inside where operator or group by में भी ऐसे ही होता है. So for example, see, so just here I'm trying to use customer ID amount, and just I want to use the aggregate function over here. So just I will use sum of from the table called as a payment, and here I've used order group by customer ID. We have 25 customer ID, and just click on that. So we get the data, and just I'm using, I want to use a having clause for that. So having sum of round bracket amount greater than 110. Okay, greater than equals to 110. So hit it. So we get that data. Okay, sum of having the data. So now in that case, I didn't change the name. So now I'm trying to use alias name as net. Okay, so here I use net val, and just I trying to execute. We don't get any problem. We get the value net val. But make a note of that. I change this sum amount aggregate function with the net value. and when I trying to use this attribute name net underscore value, we get the error. We get the error. Why we get the error? Because see, this is the aggregate function and we replace that name aggregate function with a new val. We change that, we replace that name with net val. Okay, so in that section we just replace the net val, but this is the alias name. Okay, so we cannot able to do the operation, we cannot able to do the operation at net val, and for that reason the we cannot able to use the alias name inside the we cannot use the group by inside the alias name. Okay, so this is the difference. Okay, but if you know about that the alias name is a temporary and here we cannot able to use, then we can use the aggregate function over here and just we pass the attribute name. In that section we get the output, in that section we get the output. But see, here we change the aggregate function name as a net val, and here I'm trying to use only aggregate function. That means we cannot able to do the operation. Make a note of that. Okay, so अगर आप experience हो तो आपको पता है कैसे use करना है, then we can use the alias name inside the where clause and inside the group by operator also. Okay, but if you don't know about that, then we cannot able to check that. Okay, so these are the key points, and in the interview they will ask the question regarding that. Can I able to use allies inside the where? Can I able to use allies inside the group by? Technically, we can say that yes, we can use, but we cannot get the output. Okay, but they will ask. Suppose user wants to retrieve the. Suppose I will provide the condition where user have a amount, or we can say that user have some value greater than 100, and I want to change his name as a allies name as a new, and I want to apply the condition on that change name. So in that section it won't be executed. Make a note of that. Okay, so this is the example for that. Here if we're trying to change the output, here I filter the output, and when I trying to use this new name inside this condition, then we get the note of that, then we get the error. So let's check one more time. Here I'm trying to check net value. What is a net val? This one is a alias name of what? Aggregate function. This one is a alias name of aggregate function, and here I'm trying to change that name. Okay, so in that case we get the error because it say the table does not exist. Okay, a syntax error at a sum operator. Syntax error at sum operator. Okay, so because why we use sum is aggregate function, that's why we get the such a type of error. Okay, so customer ID पे existing table के साथ में करते थे, तो we get the table not exist error. Okay, so this is about what? Alias operator. So hope so you will get the information of what information about as clause, and you can able to perform the operation. I will share the PPT. You can perform different kinds of operation on that. Okay. Now let's take about the inner joins. Okay, so we'll not focus on full part. Just we'll discuss about that inner part, and we'll took some different kinds of examples. So you will get the idea regarding what is inner join. We'll discuss about the Venn diagram also. Okay, and after that we'll close the session and we'll do one practical also. Okay, एक practical भी हम perform करेंगे. So you will get the detailed idea regarding that. Okay, we'll think about the assignment. We'll think about the one question. So before after completing that, okay, just consider what is the inner join. So what is a join operation? Join allows us to combine multiple tables. We all know that. Okay. So the main reason for the different join types is decided how to deal with information. Okay. So there are different kinds of joins are available. For example, full join is there, left join is there, right join is there, and inner join is there. Okay. So there are these different kinds of joins are available. But according to information, what information you want, according to that we need to use join operation. ओके सो ऐसा नहीं है मुझे इनर जॉइन आता है तो आई विल यूज इनर जॉइन एवरीवेयर ओके सो व्हाट इज द कस्टमर नीड what are the output what output you required okay so according to that information we need to choose the things we need to choose the things so see, let's imagine a simple example. Okay. Our company is holding a conference, okay, for people in the movie rental industry. Okay. So for example, assume that film table and that rental ID is there or rental price is there. So our company is holding a conference, a live conference for the people those who are work in the rental industry. Okay, so this is the business question. So why? Well, we have people register online beforehand and the login the day of conference. That means they here we need to provide two different kinds of tables. So in that section, first registration table is there, and second one is a login table is there. Okay, so if you want to, or the rental company industry or rental industry company wants to attend the conference, so for that they need to register themselves, and after that will provide the login id, and after that by using login they can attend the entire yeah, conference. So this is the basic example to understand the what inner join. So here we after the conference end, so we took the conference, assume that we took the conference, and after the end of conference we get these two tables. Okay, we get these two tables. First one is a registration table, and after that login table. Okay, so what is the problem? So here when I want to attend the conference, so first of all I want to register myself, and after attending the registration, just on the day of conference I get the login id, and by using that login id I can log in for the conference. So uh, this is the business question. Okay, so after the conference, that means the end of conference, we have these two tables: a registration table and login table. Just analyze that table. So four industry persons have registered themselves to attend the conference. First one is Andrew, second one is Bob, third one is Charlie, and fourth one is David. So they registered themselves to attend the conference. Just think about the login table. In that gate, we get the one as Xavier, second was the Andrew, third was the Yolanda, fourth one is the Bob. So there is a difference in these two tables, registration table and login table. Okay, so let's assume that the respective ID columns indicates that what order they register or log in on site. Okay, so this column represents how they register themselves and how they log in into them. Okay, just analyze the table. Just analyze the table. In registered table, we have Andrew, Bob, Charlie, David. Huh? And in login table, we have Xavier, Andrew, Yolanda, and Bob. What does it mean? It means that the four employees or four industry persons register themselves to attend the conference, but on actual day only Andrew and Charlie attend the conference. Why? What about the Andrew and Bob attends the conference? What about the Charlie and David? They registered themselves, but they did not attend the conference. Why? Because did not get the name inside the logins. Okay. And let's think another way. Xavier and Yolanda, they attend the conference. They attend the conference, but they did not register themselves in registration form. They did not register themselves in the registration form. They directly attended the conference. Okay, so we have these two tables. We have these two tables. Now we need to apply the inner join for that. So what is the role of inner join? Inner join क्या करता है कि columns की entry match करता है different kinds of table में. Assume that we have a registration table and we have login table. In that, when I trying to apply the inner join, so it will it will match the entries from the registration table, and as well as it will match the entries for the login table. Okay, assume that आपके पास ऐसा क्वेश्चन आता है कि for example if you want to retrieve the data who registered for the conference and who attended the conference, so for that आपको कॉमन डेटा चाहिए, जिसने रजिस्ट्रेशन भी किया है और जिसने अटेंड भी किया है उसका डेटा अगर रिट्रीव करना है, सो फॉर दैट केस वी नीड टू यूज इनर जॉइन. दैट मींस इनर जॉइंस के क्या होता है, इनर जॉइन विल मैच द एंट्रीज ऑफ one table with match the entry of another table. Okay, let's take one example here. After the an inner join will result with the set of record that match the both tables. So in that section, Andrew and Bob registered for the conference and they attended conference also. That means if you want to retrieve the data registered for the conference and who attended the for conference, we need to use inner join. So let's talk about the syntax. Don't worry about that. We will perform on PG admin, so you will get more idea regarding that. So just analyze that. So we get the common data. Okay, so इसमें क्या है? We have two tables. registration table is there and login table is there. So check out this part. This bracket will show the common data. We all know about that Venn diagram. We already learned about in data structure. Okay, union operation. So same, it will perform the union operation. So it will copy the data, okay, which is a common to registration and which is common to the login. Okay, so it will not copy the data which is not available in registration and which is available in login, or it will not copy the data which is available in login and which is not available in registration. ऐसा नहीं है कि पहले registration use करो. We can use both the table from left to right or from right to left. Okay, just we get the common data. Okay, common matches. Okay, so let's think about the query. What kind of query will cover? So here is a syntax: select all from the table. Okay, assume that we have these two tables: registration table and login table. Okay, table 1 and table 2. So select all from the table 1. Here after that we'll use inner join on table 2. Okay, so table A and table B is there. Select all from table A. I will use inner join with table B on certain condition. On is used while using a inner join on table A dot column match equal to table B dot column match. Okay, so ये दोनों में जो भी मैचिंग होगा ना वो रिट्राइव हो जाएगा. So we can use another way also: select all from table B. Earlier I am using a table A. Here I am using a select all from table B. Inner join with table A on table B dot column match is equals to table A dot column match. Okay. So what does it mean? It means that we can use left to right, right to left. We get the same result. Okay. First आप table 1 use करो, registration and login use करो, या login या registration use करो. Both are same. So assume that we get the result. Select all किया है. So we get the registration. So register ID, name, login ID and name. Okay, we get the third table 1, 2, Andrew Bob, 2, 4, Andrew Bob. Okay, so like that we get the result. So for that query, अगर ये result चाहिए तो मुझे कैसे करना पड़ेगा? Select, okay, select all from. Okay, first I will use the registration. I will use the registration. After that, I will use inner join. After that, I will use logins table. Okay, after that, I will use on. After that, I will use column name. Matching column names क्या है? Names. So I will use registration dot name is equals to login dot name. Okay, so this is the query. Select registration ID, logins name, login ID from table and inner join. Okay, so अभी इसमें क्या किया था कि हमने just what we do, just we retrieve the all data. Select all from, okay, registration, inner join, logins. Okay, just I will write it over here so we'll get the idea regarding that कि हम क्या कर रहे हैं. So while performing the operation, you will get the all idea. Don't worry about that. So assume that this one is a table. So I will minimize it. Okay. So we'll write the query for that. Okay. So here I will use select all on table called as a registration join on. Need to do the operation with what logins table, that the table name is logins. Okay, after that I will use on. Now in that table 1 we have a common attribute name called as a name, and registration table we have a name, and in login also we have a name. So we have two different kinds of name over here, so we'll match with common interest. So here what should I do? Here I will use a registration dot name equals to logins dot. So when you're trying to execute this query, we get the result. Okay, we get the same result. अभी यहाँ हमें same result मिलेगा. Okay. So when I trying to execute this query, okay. So like that we can execute. Okay. Now the next query, forget about this. We'll discuss about that. We want result in that form. Okay. We required only result ID. We required a name and we required a login ID. Okay. So for that reason, just which query we required. So here we did not retrieve all the data. So for that here I will use select What required? We required a registration underscore ID. We required that, comma, we required a name. But there is a problem inside that. Okay. यहाँ प्रॉब्लम है, क्या प्रॉब्लम है? बिकॉज रजिस्ट्रेशन के अंदर भी एक कॉलम नेम है, सी रजिस्ट्रेशन के अंदर भी नेम है एंड लॉगिन के अंदर भी नेम है. So in that section we need to specify if we have a common attribute, if we have a common attribute in the tables, in both the tables, two tables or two or more tables, so we need to define. Okay, we need to define कि ये name नाम का attribute आप कहाँ से लेने वाले हो, either from the registration or either from the login. So here we need to specify. For example, here I will use login dot name. So it will retrieve the data from the login table. Okay, if you want the name from the registration, then you will get that name. So we need to specify that whatever it may be, just आपको यहाँ specify करना पड़ेगा. Assume that here I will to retrieve the name from login. So here I will use a logins table, login dot name or logins जो भी table का नाम है वो. Okay, so select ID logins name and after that login ID. Okay, so login underscore ID. अभी इसके बारे में मैं क्यों नहीं स्पेसिफाई कर रहा हूँ रजिस्ट्रेशन आईडी, लॉगिन आईडी की आपका टेबल नेम क्या है? बिकॉज सी दीज नेम्स आर द यूनिक. ओके, कॉलम के अंदर ये नेम्स यूनिक है. So for that reason, we did not need to specify the column name. Column name कब specify करना है? Having with table name. अगर वो same होता है, if registration table have the same attribute in login table, so in that case we need to specify. And rest of other things will be the same. Rest of all other things will be the same. See, inner join and we can perform the operation. Okay. So let's do the example. So first of all, we need to understand the key point, and after that we will start the PG and win. So remember the table order won't be matter. Table order matter नहीं करता है. First we'll use registration, and after that we'll use login, or first we'll use the login. Later on I will use registration. Registration. So in that section, order is not mandatory. In inner join, make a note of that. Outer join, left join, right join. In that order is mandatory. Okay. So in inner join, the order is not mandatory. As you, if you see, just join without inner, PostgreSQL will treat it as an inner join. Okay, जब आप join भी use करते हो तो it will be treated as a inner join. So don't worry about that. So this is the point. Now we need to perform the operation. We will perform the inner join operation on customer table and payment table. Just analyze the table. Now we need to perform the operation. We need to perform the operation. So here I will remove everything and I want to apply the logic on select all from payment. Just hit that. Use the from clause. We get the data, payment ID, customer ID, staff ID, rental ID, amount. Okay, so we have that data. So just analyze the data by using the schema option. So you will get the better understanding for that. Here we have tables. So here's a table column. Check that column. So we have this option: payment ID, customer ID, staff ID, rental ID. Okay. Also, we need to check the customer table also. So click on that customer table and click open that table and analyze the table. Okay. Here we have customer ID, store ID. Here we have payment ID, customer ID. Here we have option of first name, last name. Okay, so that means we have all the data. अब इसमें ना inner join apply करना है. We need to apply the inner join. So we need to find out the common things. So here we have customer ID. Here we have customer ID. That means our common option is customer ID. We can apply the inner join on customer ID. Okay, so here we get the information customer ID because rest of staff ID is not over there. Here is a store ID. Here is a staff ID, and we did not get any common data among that tables. Okay, so we need to apply the logic. So here we'll use select all from payment. Afterward we need to use inner join. Here we need to use the inner join payment with customer. So here I will use customer on we need to match the table. So here for that I will use payment dot customer ID. Why we need to specify that payment dot customer ID? What is the reason behind that? Because customer ID attribute is a common in customer, and customer ID attribute is also common in payment. So for that we need to specify. Okay, so is equals to, here we need to specify another option called as a customer payment का तो कर लिया हमने, customer का ID check करना है. So here we need to use customer dot customer ID. Trying to execute that, we get all data. Okay, all the common data which is present in the payment and which is present in the customer. Hit that, we get the data. Just wait for a few minutes. See, we get all data. Payment ID is there, customer ID is there, staff ID is there, rental ID is there. See, first of all, it will retrieve the all data of payment, customer ID, okay, payment ID, customer ID, after that staff ID, after that rental ID, after that amount, because हमने first payment लिया था. After that payment date, again यहाँ तक आपका payment का data हो गया है. Now see, customer ID, store ID. See, customer ID, stored ID, first name, last name, email, address, everything will be there. Everything will be there. Okay, so that means we retrieve all the data. But here I am trying to retrieve what? Here I am trying to retrieve asterisk symbol. That means we require all data. Okay, as with that, अभी मुझे all data नहीं चाहिए. Instead of that, we require only few things. What should I do? I will use payment ID over here. Now also we require a customer ID. अब customer ID का तो problem है, because customer ID is available in customer and customer ID available in payment. So here we need to specify the customer ID कहाँ से retrieve करना है. Either from the payment option or either from the customer table. कहाँ से use करना है. So here we need to specify payment dot customer ID. So SQL automatically identify करता है columns. Okay, if we have a common columns, then we need to specify. We need to specify the in that section customer ID is a common column. So for that reason, आपको ये customer ID यहाँ specify करना पड़ेगा. And after that, just I want to retrieve the first name. First name. Hit that and trying to execute that, we get the result. We get the result. See, payment ID, customer ID, and first name. Okay, so why we get the duplicate data? Because this customer ID did the lots of transaction. Assume that this customer did the transaction of 6 times, so that's why we get the duplicate data. Don't worry about that. But see, the task, check करो task, ये common data है. So according to the Venn diagram, here we have Venn diagram for that. So in the payment table and another table is a customer, we get the only common data. इसके अंदर जो भी मैच हो रहा है ना, उतना ही डेटा ये दिखाएगा, रेस्ट ऑफ डेटा नहीं दिखाएगा. ओके, सो ऑलरेडी डिस्कस अबाउट द की पॉइंट. It does not follow, or it does not matter what orders we have. Okay, what order data we have. Okay, so for example, here I trying to use the select everything, select this column information from the payment. So instead of that, suppose here I do customer as a table name and inner join with payment. Just I replace the name. Just I replace the name. We get the same data. कुछ भी change नहीं हुआ. We get the same data. So that's why order is not matter. Okay, it won't matter. So इसके अंदर orders matter होते नहीं. So this is about overall about the inner join. Inner join operation ऐसे perform होते हैं. So make a note of that. To perform the inner join, we require a common data. We require a common data. So in that case, customer ID is a common, so we can match that common data by using this technique. See, payment dot customer underscore ID is equals to customer dot customer ID. Okay. So this is about what, inner join operation. Make a note of that. How we will use select options, and the difference is that if we have a common data and if you want to retrieve, then in that case we need to specify the table name. Okay, so अगर मैं यहाँ common data की जगह यहाँ मैं नहीं use करता हूँ, for example, so here I will use just alternate. Just last underscore name, and I trying to execute that. See, we get the data. we get the data. But here I'm not specifying the attribute. If you want to specify, then you can, but it's not a mandatory thing. Okay, so here first name, last name, and payment, these are the unique attributes in the both the tables. So these are the unique attributes, so that's why there's no need to specify the table name. Okay, but if you want to specify, for example, here I want to specify payment dot payment id. Okay, it will work, it will work. Customer not customer first name. Here also last name from the customer. If you want to specify the table name, then you can we get the same result. Okay, so no rows are affected, we get the same result. Okay, but we cannot able to use that. Okay, PostgreSQL automatically detects, or any other database automatically detects. Okay, in that section, if we have a common name, then and then we will provide the table name, otherwise we will not provide the table name. Make a note of that, otherwise we will not provide the table name. So in that section, these are the unique data. So in that section, we're not able to provide the table name. Okay. So I hit that and just trying to get that, we get the same result. Okay. So just I have covered the inner join operation. I will share the PPT. Watch it carefully, and after that we'll do the another operation from tomorrow. Okay. So just I want to just if you have any query, let me know. We'll discuss about that. We'll uh, discuss, and after that we'll close that. So does anyone have query? Or did you get the all concept regarding the inner join and as clause? So make a note of that. While using the as clause, just its ally's name, its alternative name. Okay, and make a note of that. We cannot use alternative. I use that word. We cannot use alternate name while using the where condition and while using the group by. If you are trying to use older name, then it will be work. But the new name we cannot apply the certain conditions. Okay, so we already discussed about the having clause, and we already discussed about the where clause with a new name. In that section we cannot able to use that. Okay, so this is about the uh, concept of as clause and inner join. So does anyone have query? Shirke, Aditi, Aman, Ankita, Radhesham says yes, he got the concept. So just if you have any query, let me know that. And just I will suggest one thing, just आपने ये practice किया है, but just one more time watch that video, you will get the all concept. Okay, थोड़ा सा tricky है, but एक बार आपको समझ में आने के बाद में ये concept clear हो जाएंगे. So I will suggest do what, just read it carefully, watch this video repeatedly, so you will get the idea. I can say that. Okay, Swapnil, Bankar.
No query, sir.
Okay. So just I will close the lecture and I will upload it, and I will share the immediate PPT after the closing the lecture. Okay. So have a nice day. Bye.